Uh, what I'm passing around is an example of this is a problem we had in Cal Highway that for years was being unaddressed. And I know that sometimes they were even spraying pesticides on this in years past. And what this is girdling. We talked about girdling. Girdling's not just roots, not just guy wires, but sometimes you'll have things like in this situation, rats that actually eat around these branches and restrict translocation for the plant, and it actually then kills it. So this might not seem like a big deal, but it's pretty significant. And uh, as time goes on, you have to address these things, and everything from insects to situations like, with rats. Sometimes we have bird issues, and there's all different things. Okay, part of my job is, again, to be out there in the field. And if you're not out there in the field, you can't solve a lot of these problems. So I try to work closely, with the contractors and help them out any way I can. Everything from education to actually hands-on. So what I try to do too is if somebody has a problem, if a contractor is, I know how long it should take, and if it's taking them a lot longer, I'll go out there and try to help them out and show them a faster, more efficient way. And if it means recommendations for different equipment, I'll recommend it. And, again, I'm very hands-on, so I have no problem going out there and actually, helping them out and, showing it. Okay, meet with the inspectors prior to start work. What was really nice is that, I take care, one of the inspectors. Robert was, the inspector for Cal Highway, and then I'm part of a pilot program. So I just came on that was one of the projects, and this is the first one that has, the bond. And so Cal Highway, what was interesting about that is, when I came in, seeing different things that maybe weren't addressed always. And one of the issues were like with the rat infestation. That's an ongoing problem. You can't just throw out rat bait. I don't know if any of you are aware of it, but once you kill the alpha rat, you actually have an explosion. So you might only have 100 rats, which when we did our initial walkthrough, to their credit, 2 weeks before their contract really started, we did a walkthrough. And upon that inspection, we saw 3 rats out there. Probably at least 50 rat holes. It was pretty self-evident you have a major problem. It's like a bad B movie. I'd hate to be out there at night. And this is in the medial strip, so it's really kind of a weird situation, but it is what it is. So we met prior to inspection, actually before they even started work, to show them what I thought were the problems that I'd like to address. We're doing this on an ongoing, basis. I'm out there probably 2 to 3 times a week. I meet with them at least once a week. And again, I'm very proactive, so I'm not waiting for things to get to a point where they become really bad. And interrupt me anytime if you guys have any questions too. Okay, review for criteria for imposing penalties. The bond is, I think, the biggest major change. That in the past, if a contractor wasn't performing, it was difficult to get rid of them because you would have a hard time paying the next contract. With the performance bond, you can literally get rid of somebody and within 30 days have somebody else there doing the work and not skip a beat. So just like me in the private sector, if I'm not performing my job, you can get rid of me and pull in someone right away. There's not a problem with that. And that's the way I think all contracts in the future are probably going to be going. And again, it just makes it much more efficient. You don't have dead time. The penalties, like Jay was talking about, it's a percentage basis. So one of the things, Jay, that when they mow, they do have to edge each time because that's part of the contract. So when they're mowing out there, they have to edge. If not, then that's a deduction because that's only, they're only doing part of the work. So it should never be at a point where it's noticeable. It should be, again, proactive. And that's my goal, on any project I'm connected with. Review percentage of deductions for infraction. That's something that the inspector should be going through, and then is, you know, they know what the infraction is with the contractor, and then the percentage gets deducted. This is, again, some of the, different things that they have to comply with, all of these. And, it might not seem like a big deal, but as any of you work out in the field, it really is. I mean, the smallest thing like irrigation could be a really big deal. It might take you 5 hours just to do one valve if it's, completely surrounded by roots. You're going to have to hand prune all those roots. It takes a long time. So it's not something to be taken lightly. The herbicide, the poor guys, as all of you know that are working out in the field, you could be spraying water and you're going to have people saying you're poisoning their kids. So it's just a perception, and that's why it's so important to do a really good job in all these public areas, because it's perception. The taxpayer, everybody's, having hard times right now, and they want to see value for their money. Rubbish and debris, it's the same thing, one of the things that I've noticed with some of the projects that really haven't been emphasized, when you have palms, and if a palm goes into a roadway and a car has to divert, that's a huge problem right there. So everybody needs to get rid of the palms before they hit the ground, before they turn brown, so it doesn't become a liability issue. So again, anybody have any idea what it costs to defend yourself in a court case nowadays? $30,000, that's for starters. To go through, you're looking easy, 60, easy. That's a lot of money to just defend yourself, whether you're right or wrong. So, these are things that we need to consider. Again, there's just an awful lot of documentation. One of the things that like Jay was talking about earlier, is to verification. If someone's doing trees, are they an arborist? Are they a certified tree worker? Is there an arborist on hand? Is that arborist a qualified arborist? Which is a big deal. Just because you're an arborist doesn't mean you're a qualified arborist. Our industry is like every other. There's guys that, have the credentials, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're good, and that's part of it. So the same thing with the CLT. There should be a CLT person at all times on the grounds doing it, overseeing it, and the same thing with the certified irrigation specialist. So these are all things that, again, if you look back, the one thing they all have in common is education, being educated out there for the workforce, and again, so they can do the best work possible. It just goes on and on and on. I know I get bored just looking at some of this stuff. Now this is important, St. Augustine grass, Zoysia bermudis, Seashore paspalum. What's interesting about this is there's a lot of tricks out there, and a lot of us know them, and a lot of people don't. So, one of the things, if you have a weed infestation problem, one of the things they do based on the weeds is they let the grass grow high. You can't see the weeds that much then. One of the other tricks are, before inspection, you scalp the grass down. That way, again, you don't see it. You have to make an arrangement for the inspector. You know what time he's going to be out there or what day. So these are things that, just to be aware of. It's just like guys out there blowing might blow the debris into the bushes instead of actually blowing them out of the bushes. Again, these are just little things that, a lot of people do, but these are things that we have to be conscious of, not to allow to happen. As far as the grass heights, we saw earlier how important that is. One of the things that, when it comes to thatch, which thatch, as Jay mentioned, repels water, when we're doing the irrigation systems, they're designed for a specific height. So if you allow thatch to grow, and thatch is incredibly prevalent in Seashore paspalum and zoysias, and we're, I think, over here by Pearl City, I think looks like Z3 or something, or El Toro. But when you're dealing with that, if you don't mow it on a regular basis, it will build up thatch. And thatch not only will repel water, but it will get so thick that the sprinklers can't shoot out and get the coverage you really need. And again, these are things that need to be addressed and people need to be aware of. So every 2 weeks is the minimum for some of these grasses to be mowed, for, in fact, any grass to be mowed. Grass clippings, you know, you don't want it on the hardscape, especially if you have gravel. And the reason for that, that will decompose and you'll actually get more weed growth out of those areas. So it's in the contractor's best interest to, you know, get those out. I'm out there, I'm having to hear it from every contractor I feel that's, you know, living in East Oahu because they're calling me, you know, what about this? What about that? I mean, I even got a call last week because there was some weeds that were already dead, but they were about 2 inches high. We went through a lot of rain, so some of these exploded. But another contractor in the private sector wanted to know how come I'm overseeing this and why aren't the weeds removed like with a blowtorch or something because it's unsightly. But that kind of gives you an idea of the expectations of, you know, certain people in certain areas. So, you know, I told them, you know, it's something I will be working on, and in the future, hopefully, you know, little things like that will be less visible. But again, these are all things that we're striving for perfection. Whether we ever get it or not, we're still striving. We can always do better. Failure to enforce practices that could result in DOH fines. You know, one of the big things too is the water, the Clean Water Act. You know, a lot of people aren't aware, but Hawaii gets regularly fined by the federal government for, you know, this very issue. And it's something that can bankrupt the company. If they're, Jay was talking about up to 25,000 a day, it wouldn't take long for most of the companies on Oahu to get buried with that. Okay, quality of cuts. We discussed that earlier. You know, basically just proper maintenance on the equipment. Mowing. Again, you know, we don't have to go through every one of these, but I just wanted to show you everything that is expected. You know, again and again and again, you see a lot of these things going on. Even mulching, you know, on some of these areas, it's something that is incredibly beneficial. But even knowing how to mulch, you know, to properly do it where it doesn't damage, you know, the plants. Verify weeds do not cover more than 10% of the ground vegetation. You know, this is tough with a lot of our areas, as we well know. I mean, most of the areas, we have less than 10% of the grass, forget the weeds. That's the reality of it. You know, and I don't know if there's any reports that have been done, but, you know, just based on my observations, it doesn't seem that it takes long for a major project to lose an awful lot of the original plant material. You know, I haven't been keeping track of this stuff. I don't have any data, but I'm just, you know, I don't know. It's a lot shorter than what it should be. These are things that should be going on for decades, not for just a few years. And one of the things that I think is, you know, really noticeable is the Pearl City one. You know, that's been in pretty good shape since that was installed. That was really nice. You know, we'll see on the other ones. I think a lot of it with the performance bond will hopefully really change things around. Many, many moons ago, that's how a lot of the contracts were awarded. And they did away with that, and now they're bringing it back. So hopefully we'll see some positive changes. And again, more and more things to inspect. You know, I could bore you guys with a lot of this stuff. One of the things that, you know, from just an inspection standpoint, it's not just the contractors that are out there having to deal with it. You're dealing with the private homeowners that aren't even maintaining their own property, yet they're really critical of the contractors. You know, there was a incident that I found incredibly frustrating that, you know, was over by Kahala. You know, an association wasn't taking care of their own little triangle area that backs up to Cal Highway. And then the contractor came and actually did a, you know, good job with the ground cover. And then they said they shouldn't have ever touched it. And 3 weeks later, I'm seeing weeds that are like a foot high. It's like, what are you talking about? If you're taking such pride in your community, then take the pride in it, but don't judge somebody else for trying to do your job in the first place. And that's just some of the frustration that I know that you all have to deal with. And I just have a, get a small taste of it. But it was interesting that I was out there and I was just having to listen to this, and it's like, okay, you want to take care of it, that's fine, But it was, weeks later, I see they've done nothing to improve it. Again, a lot of the stuff is redundant. The checklist is kind of never ending. One of the other things that I noticed is that when you have all these homes and these trees that have not been properly maintained for years and are coming over into the public right-of-ways, they might be out of the zone. They might be above 7 feet. They might, on the roadways, be above the 17-foot clearance. But the fact is, they're dropping all sorts of green waste on the public roadways. And then I'm empathetic towards the contractor that, then I'm supposed to enforce keeping these areas clear of, debris that's coming from the neighbor's house. And sometimes it's 30, 40 feet up. And I'm just wondering how that's probably not going to go over real well if that's then going to be enforced with a lot of these people that probably haven't had this done for many moons, and then saying, by the way, you're going to have to take care of this bougainvillea hedge that's 40 feet up this tree that happens to be, 30 feet above our area, and I know what the cost is going to be, and it's not going to be cheap for some of these people, and I know that's why it's been neglected. But I see that time and time again, and a lot of these public areas are going for miles. And it's a staggering task to what we're trying to do is to crank it up a few levels and to make it something that could be pristine everywhere and not just in other areas. It shouldn't be, well, this area looks really good and that area, It should be that each area should look as good as the next area. And I think that's something that, again, as an organization, we're all striving for the same goal. Okay, more inspection. As you can see, it's just just on and on and on. I think for me, what really helps me when I'm out there is that the experience I've had for doing this over 2.5 decades and out there doing everything that all the other people in the field are doing. And so that's why I'm bringing something a little unique to the table, that if somebody does have a problem doing something, I can help them out. Whether everything from hedge trimming to, weed whacking, mowing, whatever. I'm out there, I'm there to help everybody. And that's really my goal, is to try to help everybody, to the best of my ability. And I don't have a problem, the hours are irrelevant to me. My goal is to get them these projects as well as they possibly can look, to make them look like something we could all be proud of. So in a nutshell, as a contractor staff, you should be aware of all the job items and descriptions for the inspector. Exploring different deduction schemes. The percentage deduction, I think that's something that actually is a really good idea. And most of the time, if they're following the contract, there doesn't have to be any deductions. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. If they're following the contract, there doesn't need to be deductions. It's just if they're falling short in anything. The inspection for me, I am out there quite a bit. And, part of it is because we're trying to get everything in shape. I feel, like I have something to prove as well. Again, anything I'm connected with, I believe it's a reflection on me. So I take it personal, and most people in the industry that know me know that's exactly how I am. And that's probably why I get so many personal phone calls on a regular basis from a lot of other contractors out there. And they're holding me personally accountable for anything that I'm connected with. And to be honest, rightfully so. That's what I'm getting paid for. That's what I should be doing. So I have no problem with that. Any questions? Okay, thank you.